So here we go again. Blue Origin and Jeff Bezos dominating the spaceflight headlines, at least as far as the major news agencies are concerned. 6 astronauts, if we can call them that, on their way to suborbital space on a 10-minute flight on New Shepard, spending approximately 3 to 3.5 minutes in microgravity. Now, granted, in my opinion, this is a substantial accomplishment. The ability to launch on a regular basis with a pretty rapid cadence when we're talking about sending human beings into suborbital flight. This is something that was regarded as being maybe not impossible, but certainly a long ways from reality 2 decades ago, and now it is becoming something quite routine. And yet, it's still getting a hell of a lot of press coverage. But is this coverage a positive thing for the future of spaceflight? In my opinion, it's anything but. If we are to make human spaceflight an important and relevant thing for the future, especially for the average individual, then this is not the image that people need to be seeing. Extremely wealthy individuals or incredibly famous people, in this case, a successful retired NFL star, or perhaps the descendant of an important astronaut. In that regard, I think that this was an important thing to send a member of the Shepard family into suborbital flight, but as far as the rest of these people are concerned, they're not like you and me. They're not remotely like you and me, and everybody is very aware of that. Unless you are very famous and can therefore bring a tremendous amount of publicity to New Shepard, or very rich, you're out of luck. And now that Blue Origin has seized control of the headlines as far as private spaceflight is concerned, I mean, after all, does anybody talk about inspiration anymore, aside from people who are really big-time spaceflight aficionados? But aside from those people, I'll bet the average person doesn't even remember that inspiration happened, whereas this is being stuck in our faces by the mainstream media now on a very regular basis. And not just a single story, but lots of stories. And Jeff Bezos has also made a brilliant move by sending recognizable people to space. Bill Shatner, Michael Strahan, as opposed to who were those people on inspiration again? And this has ensured that Blue Origin has the controlling interest when it comes to private spaceflight, in spite of the fact that it costs millions and millions of dollars to experience this 10-minute ride, as opposed to $60 million for 4 people to fly to suborbital space for days. There would seem to be no comparison at all to be made here, but it is Blue Origin that is dominating the headlines, and this is not necessarily a good thing. As a matter of fact, when it comes to this particular flight, it's a cataclysmic thing. My name is Jordan Wright. I was born in the same year that the human race took its first steps on the surface of another world, and then we promptly betrayed those people's legacy by never going back. But now, over half a century later, there's a new breed of pioneers that are seeking to finish what these people set out to do so long ago. But there is trouble as well, so it's time for commentators like me to stop being polite and start getting angry. There are times that I really begin to wonder whether or not Jeff Bezos is aware of the extent of his personal narcissism and the psychiatric damage that it's doing not only to himself, but also to his various companies, especially Blue Origin, but also to Amazon. At the moment that he was pinning these astronaut wings on Michael Strahan and company, the Amazon warehouse in Illinois that had suffered tremendous damage during a cataclysmic tornado the previous night was reporting 6 fatalities. There's no way that Jeff Bezos was unaware of this at the time, simply because everybody in the general public was aware of it. And yet, it took several hours after this particular ceremony before Jeff even acknowledged the death of those 6 people on Twitter or anyplace else. And in the opinions of the average individual, and rightly so, Jeff Bezos' attention should have been completely focused on the death of his employees and not on pinning astronaut wings on these people. Instead, this should have been something that was delegated to another Blue Origin representative, and Mr. Bezos should have immediately left for Illinois, leaving this particular ceremony to one of his underlings and making it very clear that offering condolences to the families of those 6 dead employees was far more important than pinning astronaut wings on 6 people who had paid him a tremendous amount of money. And yet, this is not what happened. This is corporate capitalism and corporate greed at its worst. At least that's the way people are seeing it right now. And Jeff is taking a pasting on Twitter and just about every other social media platform for this gross oversight. I cannot think of any moment in the history of human spaceflight that was more tragically ironic than this particular moment. The fact that Jeff Bezos, who is now at the forefront of private spaceflight, at least as far as the media is concerned, would make the decision to offer his congratulations to 6 people who were very much alive and had also experienced a very exciting event, rather than focusing his attention on the families of 6 people who had suffered through a terrifying night and who had all tragically died. What an awful, awful miscalculation on this man's part. And it's just a long list of miscalculations that Blue Origin is making right now to make the public hate the idea of private spaceflight rather than embrace it. And instead of saying anything further about this incident myself, I'm going to go ahead and quote a few Twitter users who made their opinions heard. Quote, "It's really sickening if you want my honest opinion. Jeff Bezos has said absolutely nothing on the lives lost at his facility in Illinois after a catastrophic tornado left numerous workers trapped. But sure, go play wannabe spacemen for 10 minutes. Unreal." Another Twitter user posted, quote, "Shame on Jeff Bezos. He was in West Texas today. His employees' lives were lost. He could have taken a 1.5-hour flight to St. Louis, which is only a 30-minute drive from the airport." Another Twitter user posted, quote, "Really struggling with my rage since Jeff Bezos blasted his major carbon-polluting rocket this morning after Amazon workers died in rare December tornado last night." Okay, as far as that last comment is concerned, New Shepard does not produce any mother carbon pollution. Like any hydrogen fuel cell, it utilizes hydrogen and oxygen for its propulsion and produces nothing more than water vapor. Yes, there are a few byproducts that are theoretically harmful to the ozone layer, but minimal in the extreme. For the most part, this is as green as propulsion can get, and yet that's not what people are believing for the most part. Instead, people are thinking that Jeff Bezos is destroying the environment while doing all the other horrible things that he's doing. And although this isn't true, given all the horrible PR decisions that Jeff Bezos has made lately, it's kinda tough to argue with any negative opinion about the guy. And it's not just him, and it's not just Blue Origin, it's private spaceflight in general that is suffering. At the time of this recording, the last 29 consecutive tweets from Blue Origin's Twitter account have been about this particular flight, whereas the BE-4 engine that you're watching right now has gone without mention for weeks, if not months. In fact, the last individual to really talk about it was Tori Bruno, and for good reason, because ULA is relying on Blue Origin to a tremendous extent to finally deliver on this engine and bring 2 flight-certified engines to Cape Canaveral for Vulcan Centaur. This whole situation has put ULA and the US military in a terrible position, but of course Blue Origin isn't talking about this at all. As a matter of fact, if you ask the average person as to whether or not Blue Origin has anything to do with the future of the US military, they wouldn't know what you're talking about. But if Blue Origin fails to deliver 2 flight-certified BE-4s to ULA next year, as a matter of fact, 4 of them for 2 consecutive flights of the Vulcan Centaur, ULA will be unable to deliver on their military commitments to the Space Force by 2023 and lose a tremendously lucrative contract, and also put the US military in a very tight spot, because the fairing size on Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy is not sufficiently large for many of the payloads that ULA is supposed to be carrying up to geosynchronous orbit for the US Space Force. This is going to have a tremendous impact on the military's future plans and on ULA's future liquidity. This is a very, very serious issue, far more important than taking 6 private citizens up to suborbital flight, but Blue Origin is paying no attention to it. It would be nice to know that they are taking some of this money that they're making off of New Shepard and plugging it into BE-4 development so they can deliver on their promises. And speaking of promises, what about Blue Origin's commitment to orbital reef? This would be a wonderful thing to talk about in the aftermath of a New Shepard launch. We are using the funds that we're gathering from these particular private space flights in order to build something truly ambitious, something truly wonderful in low Earth orbit, a functional replacement for the ISS, something that's going to be substantially bigger than the ISS, an environment that's going to have the New Glenn rocket as its backbone, the second stage rather, at least in my opinion that's how they're going to build it, and then the habitable modules, which are going to add the vast majority of the living space, being provided by Sierra Nevada, or Sierra Space as they are now known. And instead of saying that this station is going to be a vacation spot for the ultra-rich, you can instead talk about the extremely beneficial things that one can do in microgravity when it comes to medical research, when it comes to 3D printing of organs, when it comes to 3D printing of new types of materials used for building and other aspects of our civilization and technology. So many things that can be accomplished in such an ambitious station. This is what Blue Origin should be talking about as they are doing their commentary on every New Shepard launch. However, that's not what's being done. Instead, we have Michael Strahan declaring that everybody should be doing this. He wants to go back as quickly as possible. I don't blame him for saying that, by the way. I guess I'd be pretty excited to experience something like that as well, but it's not a reality for the vast majority of the human population. Almost none of us have the kind of money that would be necessary to go up on a New Shepard flight. Instead, point to something like this as an end game, an end result of New Shepard, something that's going to benefit all of humanity rather than just a privileged few. And yet, Blue Origin is missing the opportunity completely. And as I have mentioned before, I'm not certain that it was a very good idea to make Blue Origin the controlling interest in this station in the first place. They just received $130 million worth of funding from NASA. All of this money, of course, went to Blue Origin as opposed to Sierra Space, who is providing the vast majority of the habitable space for this station. On top of that, Sierra Space raised more than 10 times as much money from from private sources for their ambitions in low Earth orbit than Blue Origin got from the government. Who is really committed to orbital reef? In my opinion, Sierra Space is, and also in my opinion, Sierra Space may have made a mistake as far as their partner is concerned. A ULA partnership would have made a lot more sense, but nevertheless, the die has been cast. Blue Origin is the controlling interest in orbital reef, and they are the ones responsible to see to it that it gets completed in time for the retirement of the ISS. That is a massive responsibility. That's something they should be talking about on a regular basis, but they aren't. Instead, they're talking about New Shepard and the latest round of incredibly rich or incredibly famous people that they're taking up to suborbital flight. But you may ask, why am I being so hard on Jeff and I'm going so easy on this guy? Isn't that a bit hypocritical? Well, it would be if it wasn't for a few important factors. Number one, Virgin Galactic was never supposed to be anything but a space tourism rocket, and as a matter of fact, it's being used for a variety of scientific purposes aside from its original concept. In addition to that, as you can see right here, Sir Richard Branson has started a different division of Virgin Orbit, of course, that is a serious spaceflight company, a serious launch provider that has already put multiple microsatellites and small sats into orbit for a variety of customers, including the US military and many others, and they have future flights on the board, which means Virgin Orbit has accomplished what Blue Origin has not. Even though Blue Origin has all of these massive ideas and all of these huge ambitions and these delusions of grandeur when it comes down to it, compared to what they have actually accomplished. Look at what Virgin has been able to accomplish in a shorter amount of time and with far less funding. And there are other differentiating factors as well. For example, Virgin Orbit recently signed an agreement with Astroscale to begin the effort of LEO cleanup, something that Rocket Lab did as well. A tiny little company like Virgin Orbit, at least compared to the enormous amount of potential funding that Blue Origin has, is taking the lead in cleaning up our low Earth orbit environment, an extremely responsible step being taken by a much smaller company. And of course, on top of that, flying with Virgin Galactic is far, far less expensive than flying on New Shepard. We're talking $400,000 a ticket, which is still a tremendous amount of money, but nowhere near the $10 to $20 or perhaps $25 million a ticket that many other people are paying. And the only way you can get around that, of course, is if you're an extremely famous individual that can bring Blue Origin a lot of positive publicity. Although, ironically enough, with this latest flight, 10 Michael Strahans could not make up for the enormous PR blunder that Jeff Bezos made by paying far more attention to his paying customers on New Shepard than to his unfortunate employees in Illinois. In my opinion, Virgin Galactic is demonstrating how to handle space tourism the right way, making it an exciting thing. And also, by the way, they have yet to take up more than one billionaire to suborbital flight, and of course that was Sir Richard himself. Everybody else that has gone up at this point has been a Virgin Galactic employee, and even on their first flight of average everyday people that are going to be going up, Sir Richard has announced an average everyday person who entered into his sweepstakes that will be going up for free along with a companion. What a wonderful gesture to make to the world. The opportunity for anybody to go up to space and a foundation that supports it. He is demonstrating how to handle this in a way that isn't going to be offensive to the general public. And not only that, making it useful to human civilization in general, both in terms of the scientific work that's being done on VSS Unity and the extremely important work as far as small sats are concerned with Virgin Orbit, not just to LEO, but also to interplanetary destinations such as Mars. But unlike New Shepard, VSS Unity has yet to demonstrate that it's a reliable, reusable vehicle that can be used at a reasonable cadence. It's only flown a couple of times a year at most, whereas New Shepard has demonstrated that it can fly frequently and reliably, which means that Blue Origin, for better or worse, has seized control of private spaceflight, at least as far as space tourism is concerned. And they're the ones getting the media attention. They are the ones who have the responsibility, and as you have seen in this video, they are seriously blowing it, not only for themselves, but for all the rest of us. And if Jeff Bezos truly wants private space flight to flourish, then he needs to take a long, hard look in the mirror and stop making such serious PR blunders, and on top of that, stop suing other companies who happen to win contracts when his designs come up short. If you like what I have to say, if you enjoy my type of content, you know how to support it. It's all in the description to keep all of this coming, or just a like and subscribe, and I would be very appreciative. So until Jeff Bezos or somebody like him manages to seize the spotlight away from Blue Origin, hopefully maybe the first orbital launch of Starship or something along those lines manages to grab media attention in a positive way instead of what we've been seeing thus far, I urge all of you to stay angry about space.